For centuries, the Catholic Church has stood as one of the most unshakable pillars of human civilization. Its rituals, its grandeur, and its sacred authority have shaped nations, crowned kings, and dictated laws that still echo through history. But behind the gilded ceilings of St. Peter's, beneath the solemn silence of its marble corridors, lies something else, something far less holy. An institution that controls not only the secrets of souls, but also the mysteries of the skies. Whispers of forbidden archives, vanished manuscripts, and uncanny encounters run like shadows through history. Popes who spoke out of turn have died suddenly, and rumors of hidden councils buried in secrecy fuel a darker question: what knowledge lies within those locked Vatican vaults, and why does it remain concealed from humanity? In the early 1980s, a young Brazilian priest named Eduardo Vasconcelos arrived in Rome. To the outside world, he was just another servant of faith, full of devotion, eager to study and serve the church that had inspired generations before him. But Eduardo was different. His eyes were curious, his questions sharper than his superiors liked. While others bowed their heads in prayer, he looked upward, searching for meaning not just in heaven, but in the stars beyond. The Vatican of that time was a place of contradictions, grand displays of spirituality masking corridors of silence and unease. Eduardo witnessed strange details that demanded explanation: chapels inscribed with symbols that didn't match Christian iconography, pages of prayers whispered in dialects no seminarian could identify, and even priests who seemed to know more than they ever dared to admit. The deeper he observed, the stronger his conviction grew: there was a knowledge here, tightly guarded, that went far beyond questions of faith. Without realizing it, Eduardo had stepped onto a path that would lead him to the very edge of the Church's most guarded secret, a truth that could destroy everything he believed in. Among the many clerics who crossed Eduardo's path, one figure stood apart: Father Giovan, a fellow Brazilian with unusual access to Vatican chambers few ever entered. Giovan was older, reserved, and his silence carried a weight that Eduardo couldn't ignore. On quiet evenings, the two would walk beneath the stone arches, discussing theology, history, and the mysteries of Scripture. But one night, Giovan lowered his voice and broke the careful barriers of Vatican discretion. "Not even the Pope knows everything," he murmured, eyes fixed on the cobblestones as though shadows themselves might be listening. To Eduardo, the phrase set fire to his thoughts. If the Pope, the figure all Catholics saw as the final authority, was shielded from knowledge, then something else, some hidden order or secret faction, was pulling the strings behind the veil of holiness. The more Eduardo learned, the stronger his unease grew. He found references to the Vatican's long-standing obsession with astronomy, an interest far older, and far deeper, than the faithful realized. For centuries, papal emissaries had built observatories, charted the heavens, and meticulously tracked luminous anomalies in the night sky. By the late 20th century, the Vatican had expanded its reach even further, establishing the Vatican Observatory in Arizona, armed with one of the most advanced telescopes in the world, right within reach of NASA's programs. This was not mere scientific curiosity. Internal notes suggested coordinated global efforts, secret exchanges between Jesuit priests and astronomers sworn never to reveal their data. Why did the Church, an institution claiming spiritual dominion, invest millions into studying the cosmos? The pieces began forming a chilling picture: the Vatican wasn't just gazing at the stars for signs of God's creation. It was searching, monitoring something it already suspected, or knew, to be out there. Eduardo couldn't ignore the pattern anymore. Faith was one veil, the stars were another. And somewhere between them, a hidden truth waited. Eduardo's curiosity pushed him into corners of the Vatican most priests avoided. Amid labyrinths of staircases and iron doors, he stumbled upon archives whispered about but rarely seen, where dust-covered codices held more than prayers and doctrine. Within brittle manuscripts were diagrams of constellations marked with strange annotations, star charts punctuated by symbols that did not resemble traditional Catholic motifs. Some texts were encoded in ciphers no seminarian would understand, structured patterns designed to conceal meaning from all but the initiated. One particular dossier struck Eduardo with a cold chill: fragments that hinted at clandestine meetings between high-ranking clergy and scientists. The language was clinical, detached, yet it spoke of phenomena beyond human comprehension. These were not passages of faith, nor allegory. They were records, methodical and exact, documenting something real, something unexplained. Eduardo realized with dread that the Vatican archives were not only repositories of religious history, but vaults of hidden science, preserved carefully for generations. Every page he read pulled him further into a secret that seemed too immense for one priest to uncover alone. It happened late at night, in the hushed stillness of the Vatican's forbidden corridors. Eduardo, carrying a lantern, felt the overwhelming silence press against him as he wandered deeper into a wing he should never have entered. The air was heavier there, as though the stones themselves carried a secret too ancient to share. And then, it appeared. A figure, tall and slender, standing not in shadow but in a faint glow. Its skin shimmered translucently, veins faintly visible, almost crystalline. Eyes blazed in piercing sapphire, locking onto Eduardo with unsettling familiarity, as though it knew him already. Draped in a tunic that seemed woven from strands of light, the being wore a single bracelet glowing faintly at its wrist. Eduardo froze, his faith, his reason, his very breath suspended in terror and awe. The figure did not move, did not speak. Instead, it smiled, a gesture that radiated both peace and warning. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it dissolved, fading into the very air of the corridor. For the rest of his life, Eduardo would never know if he had seen an angel as scripture described, or something else entirely. Shaken by the encounter, Eduardo became obsessed with uncovering the truth. His search eventually led him to a classified dossier stamped with a single name, Project Lux. The date, 1962. The language, clinical, bureaucratic, yet unmistakably extraordinary. Within the pages were transcripts of private meetings between high-ranking cardinals, Jesuit astronomers, and select government officials. What they discussed was beyond belief. Reports of luminous beings, described as tall, pale, radiant figures with piercing eyes not unlike the one Eduardo had seen. They were referred to only as the Guardians. Notes revealed that these entities did not simply appear as visions of faith, they conversed, they advised, and, above all, they demanded secrecy. To disclose their presence, the documents warned, would destabilize religion, faith, and the very notion of humanity's place in the cosmos. Eduardo's hands trembled as he turned each page. Here was proof that the Vatican had been engaged in a hidden alliance of knowledge, keeping locked a reality that could overturn centuries of belief. The angels, described in sermons, perhaps, were not celestial messengers at all, but visitors, alien intelligences veiled under the cloak of faith. Haunted by what he read, Eduardo began to reinterpret everything he had ever studied. Passages of Ezekiel spoke not of divine visions but of craft, wheels within wheels, full of eyes. To a believer, it was metaphor, but to Eduardo, they now resembled advanced technology, artifacts misinterpreted by an ancient world. He saw patterns linking prophecies to celestial phenomena, angelic beings to otherworldly visitors. The realization shook his faith to its core. Perhaps scripture had always contained truth, but not the truth humanity had been led to believe. Maybe what prophets witnessed were encounters with intelligences beyond Earth, folded neatly into myth so the masses would never question their origin. The deeper Eduardo delved, the more dangerous his path became. At first, it was subtle. Faces he didn't recognize lingered too long in the crowds near St. Peter's Square. Then, shadows of men in gray suits began appearing at the edges of his life, watching from across the street, blending into the background during Mass, following him through the winding alleys of Rome. Soon his office at the seminary was broken into. Papers were disturbed, files missing. On his desk, a single note was left, written in stark black ink, "Stop, or you will vanish like the others." Eduardo realized he was no longer just a curious priest, he was a hunted man. The church had secrets it would kill to protect, and he had stumbled too close to their heart. Now, there was no way back. With every day, Eduardo's world shrank. He attempted to preserve his findings by hiding manuscripts in underground chambers beneath Rome, relying on forgotten catacombs that once held martyrs. He reached out to trusted journalists, delivering fragments of information, always careful, always fearful. Yet, before his work could make it to the public, Eduardo himself disappeared. The last sighting placed him near the Tiber River on a misty evening, entering a narrow alleyway, and never emerging again. No body was found, no trace remained. Within weeks, the Vatican denied knowledge of him, erasing references to his service, his studies, his very existence. To official records, Eduardo Vasconcelos had never been. Only fragments of his warnings, scattered across obscure websites and whispered through conspiracy forums, kept his memory alive, a ghost at the edge of forbidden truth. Decades later, the world has changed, but the secrets remain locked within cold Vatican stones. Only now, the keys are no longer human hands alone. Advanced technology, artificial intelligence, drones, and laser scanners are peeling back layers of secrecy, rendering ancient manuscripts and hidden vaults accessible as never before. Thousands of pages of medieval documents, once indecipherable, are now being decoded, threatening to disrupt the silence the Church fought so hard to maintain. Will the truth about Eduardo's revelations finally see the light of day? Or will these new discoveries be buried once more beneath layers of official denial? The line between faith and outer space, between divine myth and extraterrestrial reality, blurs with every new discovery, leaving us to wonder if the greatest mystery of all isn't what lies beyond the stars, but what has been hidden here on Earth, centuries in the making. For those with eyes to see, the Vatican's eternal shadows may soon reveal their darkest light. If the mysteries of the Vatican and the truth behind Eduardo's disappearance chilled your spine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Stay tuned for more dark secrets and hidden truths, because some stories are beyond the sky.